I think cheating in D&D is good.
A hot take to open the session. Hello everybody. Welcome to DM Writer's Room, a show that occasionally starts a full 10 minutes late. I am Ethan. I am your, I guess, editor? I don't know. I felt the need to keep going because I've been running the other stream. I'm your editor. If we, I guess, if we could, I suppose, all sort of take on roles here. I think I am something between an editor and a producer, which is funny because internally to our company, I am a writer. And Spencer is our editor, so it's a little odd. I don't really know. Feels kind of different in this stream than it does in our real practice. So that's me. Let's go around the horn here. Everybody else introduce yourselves. And what you think your role in the writer's room is?
Michael, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Michael. I am the local goof.
Local goof, great.
Local goof. And I have some fun ideas sometimes here and there.
I'm Spencer. I'm the God King.
Oh, nice.
This section. That's basically it.
Sort of the divine God Emperor.
Yeah. So hear me and be scared.
We have the C-suite, and then we just have GEO at the end. What God Emperor of the Office. It makes sense. So this is a show where we demystify the DMing process by coming up with dungeons, adventures, entire games, systems, and settings live with you. You've just recently missed our Thanksgiving episode where we came up with a one-page RPG in 1 hour. GEO at the end. Hello?
I think Spencer pulled this up.
I was pulling up the chat, and it was not
good.
muted, in fact.
Where we devised a one-page RPG where you play a group of turkeys on a farm banding together to kill the chef, the owner of the farm, so that you can survive Thanksgiving. A rip-roaring good time with a pretty incredible time crunch. Today, we are coming up with a dungeon. This is heralding back to some of the early years of DM Writer's Room. We are going to be coming up with a dungeon, some monsters to populate it, maybe a magic item. We've taken these pretty far. Occasionally they spiral into sort of full adventures. I guess we'll see how it goes. So let's get a little bit of a move on. Let's get shake, rattling, and rolling here. So you, whoever you are getting ready to play Dungeons & Dragons, and you are prepping. And here's us. And we're going to do the very same thing. We just don't get to play a game at the end. We just do the prep part of it and see what we come up with. So what level do we want to make a dungeon for? We tend to skew low. As somebody who's currently trying to make dungeon encounters for a higher level party, I think it might be kind of interesting to kick things up a little bit, right? That 10th, 12th level party dungeon starts to look a little intimidating. I suppose most people, however, are probably playing between levels 1 and 8 before their campaigns peter out or stop. So let's start there. Let's roll. Let's get the dice involved and see what we can't get done. I'm gonna crack open my Dungeons & Dragons original color set because it's my favorite one for this stream. You can buy it on ChessX for like $5. I actually recommend buying this set. It is their cheapest set. So if you are trying to get into the hobby or you know somebody who is, get them this cute little set. Christmas time's coming up and say, hey, this is from the original box. This is what they look like. I think it's pretty fun. I have not done it as a gift yet, but there is somebody who I think I'm going to get it for if it continues to bear out. So I'm going to roll a d4 to determine what tier of play we are making a dungeon for. So everybody cross your fingers that I don't roll a 4 because then the stream's going to be 5 hours long. So I rolled a 4.
Okay.
Do we want to mulligan or do we want to stick with the tier 4?
The dice giveth, the dice taketh away.
What's fun about tier 4 is we're really pretty limited in terms of our vibes, like our SRD options.
So that's 17, 18, 19, 20. That's the 4 levels that we are working with. Does anybody else have dice near them?
I do.
Ew.
Okay, who wants to take the next die roll?
Michael, go ahead.
Sure.
Roll a d4.
1.
So we are creating a dungeon for a party of level 17 adventurers.
Such a specific number. So specific. All right.
Level 17 dungeon. So that means something about this dungeon is an existential threat to the world, to the multiverse itself, right? This is the biggest level of oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no that you can possibly get into. So let's
harassed.
start up front. We have our biggest level of threat. I will just ask, what are we arrayed against? What great force of the universe? Let's put a theme on this thing. Sometimes we come with these in advance, sometimes we come up with them in the moment, while everybody ponders and comes up with a loose thought of what they think a level 17 party is taking on. I'm gonna wax poetic about this a little bit. So in kind of more classical D&D settings, right, you were mostly the forces of law warring against the forces of chaos, right? That is kind of the big thing. You are balanced, sort of oriented, right? You have demons on one side, very chaotic. You have devils on the other, overly lawful. And so you are sort of trying to strike that balance. As things continue, we start to get a little bit more good and evil, a little bit less, law and chaos. A lot of them are drawing from sword and sorcery. Books like the Elric books, which I have been reading recently, which are absolutely insane. They sprint all over the place, but regularly Elric will speak of the forces of chaos, which he must be opposed to, and harness frequently, for the record. In sword and sorcery, you're like, they're pure evil, and I use my sword to conquer them. It's kind of what they're sort of always into. So if we wanted to stick with a sort of more traditional lilt, right, we could pick an alignment to point ourselves towards, or we could kick around some concepts for this existential world-ending threat. We don't need to base it on SRD or D&D monsters, but we certainly can. Remember, this is a prep show. Most people aren't coming up with monsters whole cloth to run a game. We can really handle it either way. I vamped for a good couple minutes. What's the thought?
Here's my pitch. I've got one.
Great.
I think that playing around with increasing CR on already extant monsters is always fun, and it's useful for people, for DMs to see. My idea is you are fighting seramorphized creatures. The seramorphosis no longer is only applicable to humanoids, and the mind flayers have been using it on other beings. So you've got like a seramorphized Endrosphinx, things like that.
Ooh, okay. I like it. And I like the thought that we can sort of bring other big, cool monsters in. So let me ask. I can think of 2 high level. So for those of you tuning in now, and for our own purposes, we're coming up with a dungeon live, populating it. We random rolled the level, 17. So quite high. Now my question then becomes, lock back in there, there's 2 monsters related to Illithid. There's actually 3 that I can think of who could sort of punch at this level. And I don't know what the CRs are, so we're going to have to go over them. The first is an Ulitharid, which is an Illithid that has begun to awaken into something stranger and will eventually become an Elder Brain. The second is an Elder Brain itself. We've sort of chatted about these before. They've come up on occasion. Some of you may have fought a very, 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 very much watered down one in Baldur's Gate. They are watered down to almost nothingness. And then finally, the Elder Brain Dragon stat block is the sort of final one, right? That is from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, and is a horrible mind flayer experiment where 4 Elder Brains work in collaboration to join together with a dragon and create a new and terrible creature.
They drift horse into a dragon.
There you go. So first things first, what's an Ulitharid rocking with? Is that too low?
Ulitharid is 9.
So that thing would get...
So it can be there. There can be a group of Eleutherid, like a couple throughout this dungeon, but it's not the main.
Let me ask, what is the experience points on a CR9 creature? How much experience do you get for killing one? It should be right there.
It's a great question. Not right where I am, because I'm on the Forgotten Realms fandom wiki.
Oh, it doesn't have the CR and a little number listed next to it?
No, just the CR.
No!
Yeah, nothing there. I'd have to go on another page, which is fine. Real quick.
So I'm going to just check in really quick. We have to assume... So creating encounters is always a little bit of a crapshoot. What's up,
I
Michael?
do have a question. Are we
5,000.
going with this plan, or are we both giving our ideas too?
That's a great question. I pitched quick.
Neither of our hands shot up, Michael, and so I just assumed that we were going to roll on with Spencer's.
No, that's okay. Sorry, I was just letting Spencer go first.
Pitch your idea then, big man. Go!
First idea I have, it's a little bit of a cop-out, but I think it's a fun cop-out. Big Bad is some for a reality warper that is making low-level creatures into insane high-level creatures.
Very similar.
Very
to the
similar.
pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right.
In your other pitch?
Oh, that was it.
Oh, I thought you had a second one. Gotcha.
Mm.
So I think that it basically is the same with the creating beings into seramorphized versions of them. It's just a bit more specific.
Sorry, I did not know what seramorphize meant.
Seramorphosis, it's getting turned into a mind flayer. Basically, they put the little worm in your brain and they make you turn into
Somebody
a mind
who
flayer.
has been actively playing Baldur's Gate 3 with us on stream for such an incredibly long time, being like, "What's seramorphosis?" is the funniest thing that has ever happened on this stream, whether we want it to be or not.
What is a mind flayer?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, to be fair, the way we play Baldur's Gate 3, also check out our Baldur's Gate 3 stream, Game Masters of Games, we're live every week, is not true. We're sort of doing a combat sim through the world of Baldur's Gate 3.
You know what we're doing? We're playing AD&D in the world of Baldur's Gate is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So
we're playing murder hobos.
The Eleutherid is so out. Assuming that we have the average size party for D&D, which is 5 players, the experience budget for monsters is a cool 58,500 for hard encounters and 36,000 for medium. So the 5,000 experience Eleutherid is not involved. So I think we need to delve into the world of homebrew at least a little bit.
Yep.
So here's what I will say. Do we like the idea of the thing causing all of this terrible effect to be something that looks like an illithid, something that is vaguely humanoid with a tentacled maw? Or do we want a sort of elder brain, larger and more alien thing at the end? Let's make that choice right now. Michael, vote. 3, 2, 1, go.
Small humanoid.
Spencer, vote. 3, 2, 1, go.
Elder brain thing that's piloting the ship that the dungeon is.
Who wants odds? Who wants evens?
You don't have a vote, Ethan?
No. Who wants odds? Who wants evens? Spencer gets odds. Michael gets evens.
It's gonna be a 5.
It was a 7.
Fuck.
Okay, but it is odds. So we have a ship being piloted by our nefarious ne'er-do-well, which is some version of an elder brain, right? And I think that goes down smooth. I've got no issue there. I'm looking through my own notes here. Let's get a little bit of a CR thing. So, number 1, this is a level 17 dungeon, so it's safe to assume that the players have gone here, right? That it is something they can have chased down to solve this problem, right? These creatures appear. Maybe they've been seeded for a few levels, and now, finally, at level 17, we are ready to delve into the dark and find the source of this nefarious thing. So, if I'm thinking of this prepping as a GM, as a keeper, as a DM, as whatever, my first question is, what is this dungeon for? Why is there a dungeon here, right? A dungeon's a weird thing to build. Why is there a dungeon? It sounds like we have our answer, which is that this is not a dungeon. This is like an experimentation lab, and it just happens to be kind of dungeon shaped because these things want to escape. They don't want to be turned and morphed into horrible creatures, and so we are kind of joining alongside them, trying to get them free in some cases, and trying to put them down mercifully in others. Michael, what's up?
Do we want the dungeon to be this thing's ship?
Yeah, that's what I think we
yeah.
were. I think that's the direction Spencer was heading in, which I think, if that is seconded, fantastic.
I'm
Is
cool
the
with
ship
a
in the
giant
sky?
flying. I'm cool. I'm cool with it being a giant flying through the sky ship. I'm also not opposed to it being, I'm thinking One Piece. What's the island where we meet?
Oh,
Skeleton Man, Brook.
Brook?
Skelebar, not Skelebar.
you meet that fool on a ship. The island that's nearby. I don't know. What
it's a
about
ship,
it?
but they call it kind of the island. But it is a ship. I'm thinking.
So we've
like
gone
that.
off the path a little bit here. So what you're saying is you're okay with it being a ship, but you have a slight preference towards it being a ship so large that it is indistinguishable from a landmass. Is that where we're going?
Basically.
Okay, there we go. I like it. So
Thrill bar.
Thriller bark.
you are making some really bold assumptions about how much I know about hit manga series One Piece.
Now the interesting thing is Michael's
Piece.
referencing my least favorite arc of One Piece.
Same.
So I'm gonna push back on it just in that sense. But otherwise, a good idea.
So an Elderbrain clocks in at a solid 11,500 XP, which makes it still a little weak sauce. So here is where we are at now. We are developing this Mind Flayer dungeon. We've settled on that as our topic. We know it is a ship that we want to be so massive and cavernous that it almost seems like it is part of the world. So my pitch is that this ship, wherever it is on the prime material plane or elsewhere, crash landed eons ago. And these experiments have been happening ever since. Right, this has been a long and slow process. I'm almost getting kind of for the StarCraft fans out there, I'm almost getting a like Zerg, like living ship vibe. I know nautiloids look like they are sort of biological to some degree, but they are not, as far as I'm aware, alive. I'm thinking of like truly like a constructed, like a grown or maybe taken over ship. My first thought immediately is in Spelljammer, there are a number of, if memory serves, just space whales, I believe is all they are called. The thought that this is a sort of living biological ship that has been taken over, right? The great victory of this Mind Flayer, of this Elderbrain, is its vessel. We see this first instance of seramorphosis taken to an extreme, bizarre scale that other Mind Flayers would take as heresy. They do have a concept that there are things you are not allowed to do. And I like the idea that we have this kind of rogue agent who is forging ahead. The grand design has broken. Only I can see the future of our people. Forging across the stars, creating new life, regardless of its source. No longer concerned with the purity of Mind Flayer being. Pretty solid. Is there any other spin on that we're trying to do?
The Elderbrain is called the Grand Designer. It does not have another name. That's already set.
I love designer. The Grand Designer, I think, might be a little too on the nose. Can we lean that in a direction?
I don't know if I would want to. This thing's full of itself. It's gone against the everything that its people kind of go for. Calling yourself the Grand Designer, kind of up its own alley.
True designer. Yeah.
I'm gonna write the Grand Designer, and
God, Lord Designer.
I'm gonna make this is a called shot. I get to do these all the time, which I love. Babe Ruth pointing at the stands, and right next to it, I'm just gonna write the Architect. And when we're trying to make this publishable in a couple of months, and Spencer says, I'm not sure about that name, I'll go, what about the Architect? And he'll be like, I could go for that. So, calling it! Call him a shot!
We'll have a backup name.
Don't watch the VOD, Spencer. I need you to forget this as soon as possible so that I can be proven
I don't
right
watch these
eventually.
bad boys back.
So-
I let it ride.
We have the Grand Designer, an elder brain who has decided that the Grand Design must be abandoned. Right? There is no other choice but to forge a new path, and it begins in some far-flung corner of the world. So, my main question then, if we are hunting this creature to the edge of space, where does a Mind Flayer go to get away even from other Mind Flayers? So it's not in the Astral Sea, right? It can't be there, because that's where Mind Flayers and Githyanki are screwing around. Where do they sequester themselves off to? What dark corner of the universe does a Mind Flayer god seeking to transform its people set up shop?
I think, as always, the best defense is a good offense. And planning yourself where a bunch of mortal races are is probably the best maneuver. It's probably just prime material plane, like in the Forgotten Realms, wherever we want to put it, using everybody else as sort of a shield and cloak from the rest of its kind. It's a good way to get experiments done, get tests, and keep yourself sort of covered from the others.
Sure.
Okay, so it's on the prime plane. So when our party approaches, is this ship like asleep? Is this a great slumbering vessel? Is it on the ground? Do they have to like break onto it? Is it like one of Zariel's flying fortresses? Do they need to, ascend to it? Or is it beneath the ground? Is it still buried when we encounter it?
I think when you encounter it, it's in the water. That space whale is sort of doing a mirror there. And then in the course of breaking in and having it be infiltrated, it begins to fly up into space. So then you have to commandeer the vessel, have a secondary objective, so you don't suffocate.
Using Spelljammer rules, that would actually be really fun, because you would have an incredible amount of time until you suffocated because of how big the air envelope on something like that would be. You'd have days. But days on a hostile ship that hates you, right? Talk about a place where the entire ship is the lair of the Elder Brain, because the Elder Brain is in control of the entire ship. We've got a real, one of my favorite, burned on a terrible movie, Blackbeard in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, who has the sword that can control his ship, remains one of the coolest villains stuck in a bad movie in history. That movie goes hard as hell, except for the plot. that little problem. So I love that. I love the idea that we have this sort of great, almost general, like this warmonger, right? Something that is making experiments and seeking to change the grand design. I think that's really cool. So the party at this point has encountered a couple of these horrors on the prime plane. They have begun to track them down. Maybe they've been running into them for levels and levels, right? Maybe they found some like twisted general that made a deal with this thing. They finally tracked it down, and at level 17 they break onto the ship, right? That's your next mission. Get onto the ship, get to the core, get to whatever the middle part is, kill the Elder Brain, crash the ship, and try not to die doing it. I think that's awesome. So, because we're designing for high-level play, we immediately have to start taking some other things into consideration, right? We're designing for level 17 players, not level 5. So I need to know, why doesn't plane shift solve this problem? Why doesn't gate solve this problem, right? What are the interferences? I think we've answered one. The ship moves. You can't teleport onto a moving object. That is not how that works. And that is fun fact. Unfortunately, for a lot of people who are about to grumble, it is true. You need to pick a location, and a flying ship, as much as we all like to think of it as like a train, where it's like, yeah, but if I jump, I don't go flying backwards. And it's like, yeah, but if you winked out of existence where you were and back into existence in the same place, you wouldn't be in the car anymore, champ.
You would tumble.
So you would need to, in my mind, you would need to pass an incredibly difficult Arcana check to like do the math on where it is going and how
Great.
fast it is going to intercede and teleport where it is going to be rather than where it is at the moment of casting the spell, because the floorboard does not count.
And I still think you don't have the momentum to keep on going. You would hit the wall so hard with it going forward.
I guess that's
Yeah, if it's moving 100 miles per hour, you're not moving 100 miles per hour. You're hitting that wall. You know, you're going to get caught.
Now, this is actually interesting. If that would be true if you teleported onto the deck of the ship, because all of a sudden there would be air resistance. If you teleported inside, you would be fine because there is no air pushing you. The
you
thing
still
that
don't
makes
have the momentum, though.
momentum comes from air hitting you. Right? If you could teleport from inside a car to inside a train, it doesn't matter that the train is moving fast because the air inside the train is not moving fast, and so there is no force to carry you to the back of the train.
You'd still be you winking. Well, that has you don't have the acceleration to keep up with it, though.
Welcome everybody to Physics Corner, the corner where two of our DMs talk about physics, and I don't know anything about science.
Yeah, I could be wrong. I'm just under the impression that is not how it works, because that momentum comes from the movement of air, not the movement of the object, right? An object underneath your feet can move at functionally infinite speed, and as long as it doesn't suddenly stop, you are fine. The most important thing I would say in counter to all of this is it's Dungeons and Dragons. So let's move on.
Earth physics in, yes.
So you find out that the ship is in this place. You travel to the living ship of the Grand Designer, an elder brain that is seeking to remake the Grand Design and its people in its own image. This entire ship is clearly infected and twisted into some strange form. I'm tempted to say we don't know where nautiloids come from, if memory serves in D&D. I'd have to grab the old Planescape book behind me. If that's true, I think this is a great way to discover that the nautiloid were once a species, were once a beings, a people that were all transformed. And the reason that mind flayers cannot make more is that they worked them into extinction. There are no more nautiloids to be transformed, and so to fix them, all you can do is heal them. So, what are the big threats on the living ship of the Grand Designer? And let's pick up the pace a little bit. We're kind of dragging our feet here because we're getting stuck in Idea Town. This is a dungeon. We want it to get done in one session, which means we want 5 to 7 encounters as people navigate, right? We're not here to make a mega dungeon. So,
Or are we?
we aren't.
We're going to do this for 7 sessions.
Yeah, exactly. So traps and stuff, let's hold off on those. I want to know what the threats are, because the threats are not mind flayers. So let's start with our main big central thing, right? We know what that's going to be, right? We have an elder brain in its mighty power that is empowered, right? We need to add some stuff. We need to add a little sauce. So this elder brain is obsessed. Rooms in the ship are sentient with the creature's attributes, which were mutated into the rooms. James, you've done it again. It's the grossest thing you've ever done, but you've done it again. This horrible chimera in the sky. Chimeras in the sky. All right, so we have this elder brain. What has this elder brain done to modify itself to be more perfect than perfect? Right? The Illithid believe themselves to be the most perfect beings in existence. What does an elder brain do to become more perfect than perfect? Is it become more animalistic? Does it become almost geometric? Is it like almost crystalline? What are we thinking?
I think that it has merged more fully with the nautiloid than any other elder brain has done, and so is sort of layer and master at the same time. So they kind of go hand in hand. So that's how it's empowered.
So some real Legend of Zelda shit. I like it.
You know me.
So sort of layer and master fused. So this elder brain is part of the architecture of the room, which I think is very cool. It's able to move around because I imagine a sort of gross flesh glide ability, right? It can just kind of...
Yeah. It definitely glides around, still attached, and I think if it has to go to like a really far spot, it just kind of sucks in, pops out.
And that first encounter for the party, like entering the ship and seeing a wall go boom and disappear away, and then return at the end of a pretty hard fight, would be really cool.
And then it's doing these experiments, so it has these like clearly there is some other modification. Elder brains are pretty covered with like tentacles and stuff, but I'll add like tendrils and tools. So not only are you fighting this elder brain that is sort of possessed of the space around it, it is also able to kind of like conjure extra limbs. Now, even if we empower that by quite a lot, we are still only going to be in like the 15k mark, which means assuming that this is our hard final encounter where we want a player or two to potentially die, we have a cool like 40,000 more experience to rattle off of, which means easily 4 or 5 more creatures need to be in this room. So what is the role of the Elder Brain? I'm going to gasp, prepare yourselves. I'm going to use a little bit of 4th edition parlance.
Dunes.
Yeah, so what kind of monster is an Elder Brain, right? The easy answer is it's a leader. It issues commands, and it buffs its troops. Did we have any other thing we sort of thought might be, right? We have ambushers, and so we have ambushers, artillery, skirmishers, which are like dashing in and out. Probably not that one, eh? Brutes, which are like big pools of health. Soldiers, which are high AC defenders. Am I missing anything? I think that's it. Oh, support and control. Control or leader, I think, make the most sense. The only real question we have, does the Elder Brain affect the party or affect its allies?
I think it affects its allies more than anything.
Great, okay. So we have this sort of leader support kind of figure, and I think that's awesome. Now, I think the rest of the creatures can be from other rooms, right? I would love to re-encounter some of the nasty shit that our party is going to fight in the other rooms of the dungeon. That way they know how to approach it. They will have remembered the lessons they learned, some of them hard learned. What is the special thing this Elder Brain is working on, right? What's the big tank that opens up when you enter the room and a bunch of Gundam steam pours out as a hand reaches out? Like, what do those hands look like? What pulls itself out of that space? If this was a level 20 adventure, I would say Yanaug, the Demon Prince of Hunger. But we need to pump the brakes a little bit. So what do we think? We can either take a popular D&D monster and sort of really shoot the what's the Pokemon thing in like the more recent ones where you can get like the max huge version, the mega evolution.
Gigantamax.
Yeah, what's the Gigantamax? Are we going straight up the middle? Is it a beholder, or do we have some other thought kicking around?
I was thinking along the lines of like aboleths or like augmented bone devils.
An aboleth or a devil are both incredible options. The aboleth in particular feels kind of on point, right? Because it is a competing psychic creature. What happens when a mind flayer takes over something that is already psionic? When you stack like that, what is the result? And the other option of Fiend of the Nine Hells is pretty tight as well. Like, what happens when this incredibly evil beacon of another plane is taken over, is sort of, consumed and made into a new form? And some of those, like a Balor, no, Balors are demons, a Pit Fiend, right, which is basically a Balrog with infinite fireballs. It can at-will fireball. That's not a joke. What happens when one of those things gets hit with that Ceramorphosis ray? So do we have a preference between the two? Do we want to roll a die?
I prefer Aboleth. I think that it stays in sort of that spacey theme in a fun way.
Okay, so we have the Elder Brain's great project. It's proof of concept, which is this aboleth. So for those of you who don't know what an aboleth is, the aboleths, in a previous video that I scripted, I mixed up the names with another company's version of the aboleth, which is quite funny. The aboleth are these ancient beings from kind of before civilization that arrived in the world on a giant floating city called like Zir or Zerks or something like that. They are these intensely powerful psychic creatures. They can send signals up to like a mile away, which a mind flayer needs help to do. They turn beholders into creatures called mind witnesses that send their sort of psychic energy other places. An elder brain is closer to what we are dealing with here. Aboleths also excrete a strange mucus that transforms the creatures that touch it into helper drones called scum. I love aboleths. I think they kick ass. For those of you who have MCDM's Flea Mortals, it's an Olithek in there. Slightly different take.
Aboleths also know everything in history, right? Am I thinking of the right thing?
I think they have infinite... they have infinite memory, I think. They remember to the beginning of time.
Yeah, something like that.
So it's not that they know everything, it's that they have never forgotten anything, and so the great secrets of the ancient ages are something an aboleth is far more likely to know. Which,
if you're a mind flayer, would be pretty useful.
Would be incredible. Mind flayers are sort of politely are implied to be from the future, I believe. I'm not quite sure what the deal with that is. I remember that there is something. I'm sure somebody is banging on their keyboard, screaming into the sky and shaking their fist. So
You're wrong.
Yeah, of course. What happens when a mind flayer takes over an aboleth, right? A mind flayer takes a human, imbues them with psionic energy, consumes them from the inside out, and another mind flayer is the result. If they goof up and do it to a gnome, right? A gnome seromorph is the result, something that is very similar, but with longer tentacles and a little bit more of a savvy for technology and making things like laser pistols, stuff like that. What happens when the giant alien fish monster, like this psychic from beyond the stars, is subsumed and consumed by a mind flayer?
I'm looking up Aboleth's abilities real quick. They've got Enslave, they've got a Tentacle Attack, and they've got Probing Telepathy, Mucus Cloud, so that's an underwater ability, which would make sense for why the ship is underwater. It's just sort of baked in.
Yeah. I'm glad I didn't forget too much, which is good. Yeah, is there a tank of water in there? So here's the big question. Let's answer this first. Is this a water level? Or has one of the modifications made this creature so that it is no longer bound to the water?
The party at this level can definitely deal with underwater. One of these people has got water breathing. So I think that it's okay just to have it be underwater, and that's why the ship is in the ocean. I think that's fine. Do we agree?
Sure. Yeah, so my main question is just, so I totally get that. Yeah, absolutely. But we're doing these experiments, we have these other living creatures, so the entire ship can't be flooded.
No, it's just this room.
Yeah.
You guys have to see the logistical problem here. How do they get into the room?
You open up the big orifice and you walk through, and it's all water.
Terrible mucus meniscus. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I think this is the center of the island, and it is like a porthole you have to dive into.
I was thinking like in the gills section, so the water's constantly flowing through here. There's some water resistance, but yeah, both of those work.
So let's take the signatures of an aboleth, right? We have this mucus, we have this like dominate, and then we have a good old-fashioned attack. And then I'm going to add bonus action to the bottom because we want to be better designers than our forebearers, right? So what does this mucus cloud that transforms those that enter it, what does that turn into when an aboleth is taken over? How does it become weaponized by a mind flayer? What do they do? My first inclination is that this is no longer this passive cloud that you have to be careful to not to spend too much time near. It is now a weapon. It is something that can be directed. It is like dragon's breath, right? It is this
cloud.
It spews it. And this is going to get gross. Like, I'm imagining it full of maybe not mind flayer tadpoles, but like little things. Like they're swimming, burrowing
I was picturing the mind flayer
creatures.
tadpoles.
Yeah, I was thinking this probably it helps seromorphize stuff.
Yeah, so the only issue there is just that mechanically that would break pretty quick.
Okay.
So it can be something similar, it can be something related, but mechanically anybody who failed the save would instantly die, I think.
Yeah. I'm looking up
Could
really
be
quick how it works in
like,
5e because that is insane.
could be like a mass dominate person cloud.
Because I think a ridge, like as written, you get brought down to 0 HP, it sticks a tadpole in your head, and you turn into a mind flayer like immediately. You go unconscious, and then you turn into a mind flayer, and you cannot be resurrected. I think that was a good way to kill players back in the day in a way that a diamond couldn't solve. So let's step outside of that while Spencer does a little bit of research, right?
Yeah.
So we like the idea that that mucus becomes a weapon, some kind of breath or aura weapon. I think that's great. Its ability to sort of passively dominate creatures' minds, I think we can just ramp that up a little bit, right? It is able to issue commands. That is one of my favorite changes. The mucus cloud also spawns ooze imps. See, James is on the level here.
Spawns what?
Ooze imps. Something like that I think would go down very smooth. I like the idea. So for domination, this is a hot take. I think giving a creature the ability to dominate one of the players is exceedingly boring for that poor player. So I would like to make a counteroffer, which is the aboleth can issue commands, right? So it's not that it takes you over for a whole turn. It is that as its bonus action, it can issue you a command, and you need to save or perform the command. And it can be things like attack an ally, flee, drop your weapon. And so constantly you are getting these waves of psionic energy that are issuing you commands. I think that is more satisfying than, hey, fighter, you don't get to play. Go
fair.
home. You don't get to play today. I tell you what to do for the next 6 rounds.
What I like about that is that gives us a leader and a controller on the battlefield in this last combat, and then we can populate with those like perfected forms of minions that they had been working on. The answer is in 5e, there aren't rules for it, but if the host's brain is eaten, they are taken over and seramorphized. That it's essentially a hand wave because they don't expect DMs to use it.
Okay, so then we get to just decide what is the nature of this breath. So I don't want it to be too similar to what Mind Flayers and Elder Brains do, right? Which is they have this paralyzing aura. They send off this like boom that paralyzes people, and then they try to eat brains. Go ahead.
Could it eat spell slots?
Mechanically, that's tough. That's
Yeah.
all.
All right, just slinging ideas. Could it cause levels of exhaustion?
Huh. I think we ought to proceed. We are almost an hour in. I think we're getting too noodly. I think that is a good idea. I like the idea of exhaustion, right? Let's play with the mechanics that other people don't use, right? Exhaustion's really underused. I like the idea that it is save and take psychic damage, fail, take psychic damage, and take exhaustion. And we can sort of flavor that exhaustion as you begin to lose your will to fight. You feel something strange, like the mucus is alive. You can feel it inside you, and it is beginning to change the way that you think. Ramp up action based for the dominate I think is great. Attack we don't really need to worry about too much. I like the idea of turning dominate into a bonus action that this monster gets to do. So we have its big scary action, we have its basic action, we have its bonus action. Does one of these two creatures get... We have some layer actions kicking around for the Elder Brain, right? Mm-hmm. What do we think those bad boys are? It sounds like they should mostly be empowering or summoning allies, maybe one or two affecting players. I'm always tempted by, like, warping touch, right? The players roll to gain a mutation. And if they roll high, it's a good mutation. Like, it can make them stronger. It can be positive. But most of them suck. Tends to be my sort of lean on that. How do we feel about that?
I think at this high of level, it's fun. Another option would be that flesh movement, where it can like go across the walls and the floor and the ceiling. It utilizes that flesh crawl, and anybody that it can get to within 60 feet has to make a dex save or fall prone, become difficultly entwined, something like that. So they lose movement basically because they've been hit by this.
That's cool. I don't think that we can I don't think we can like hold person or like change its movement or we can't knock prone this guy.
Certainly not. This thing is not able to have that happen.
Immune to prone, certainly. I tend to always offer, and I would give this advice to Wizards of the Coast if I could, to gain an immunity is to gain a vulnerability. So we are going to have to create some sort of matching weaknesses there. But yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So my pitch for 3 sort of legendary or layer actions would be Warp, right? It inflicts a terrible warping curse on one of the people in front of it. Flesh Move, right? It burrows and makes its way around without incurring an opportunity attack. And then finally, Room Warp. Somebody gets flesh to stone, gets like grabbed, and needs
stone to flesh,
rip their way out of the floor as they are restrained. Is my
flesh to gross flesh. I think his vulnerability is he can no longer fly. He is attached.
Oh, it's fully encased. It can only be on the ground or the walls of the ceiling. It's pretty cool.
He can get some height. He can probably get like 10 feet up, but he cannot fly.
That's
sure, no fly. And then trying to think about what it would be. I think maybe it's not, maybe it loses whatever immunity to poison it used to have, right? It has become something very physical. It has become something that is no longer impervious. Maybe it's vulnerable to poison. That's kind of fun, right? To think of something.
It's super biologic now.
Yeah, it has become so biological that it has gained a weakness. I'm a big believer in giving monsters weaknesses. I hate high-level monster design where they're like, you just don't get to do any of your cool stuff. It's immune to everything cool, and so hit it with a normal sword, idiot, is something that I'm always like, what are we doing, guys? Okay, so we have our loose dungeon design. We have this living ship. We have our big bad, the grand designer in Elderbrain that has abandoned the original grand design. We have its main project in Aboleth, morphed into terrible controller of the battlefield. And now it's time to make a brief group menagerie cluster of other monsters. We need to populate a good 3 or 4 encounters, so I'm looking for a couple of hitters here, and these things should be absolutely awful. We are going to have to juice up an Elderbrain big style, like merge it with some other stuff for it to be able to hold up. That Aboleth stat block is going to be based on a blue dragon. You know what I mean? We are going to have to really punch up. So what monsters has this thing warped and ceramorphosized into kin?
Michael, what was yours?
We will need a ceramorphized gnome because I think that's hilarious.
First creature you encounter.
Just one CR1 gnome.
He was its first project.
I've been here for 1,000 years.
I got him. Takes out a little laser gun. Just goes for it.
Mine is a planetar.
Yeah, of course. We need one of the fights needs to be a planetar, needs to be an angel and a devil that have both been ceramorphosized, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and
because
then
there's a reason it's still here, on this place.
And when it gets to half HP, they do fucking Dragon Ball fusion. There we go.
Yeah.
All right, so what is on par with the heavy hitters there, right? So we want to hit, what's our CR budget? We want to hit between 18,000 and 24,000 XP worth of nasty per bad guy. So, rip me up a pit fiend, a bone devil, an ice devil, right? Some of the other high level nasties, and tell me what is the CR to XP equivalent on that?
So planetar is 16 with 15,000 XP.
So that's just shy, and we're going to add a couple abilities, so that might be just about perfect. We could maybe go up to what's after a planetar, which is, Oh no, it's Planetar something solar.
Solar.
And I can't remember
Yeah.
what's in there. There's something in the middle. I just can't remember what it is.
I don't know. I'm not seeing it. There's a Deva, but that's below.
So what's in the what's over in the devil corner that is on that Planetar level?
There's the Baelor for 22,000 XP, CR19.
Sure, that's a demon. I don't mind that.
Yeah, and I think that the Marolith is also a demon. A lot more demons than devils, in fact. There's the Ice Devil at CR14, and that is 11,500 XP.
I think maybe the Baelor might be the way to go then.
Yeah, works for me.
So a Planetar and a Baelor, who have both been transmorgified by this into, like, foul creatures. I think that's super fun. And then, I am not kidding. I want them to do a little fusion dance when their HP gets below a certain threshold, and you have to fight this new awful thing. So let's really quick rattle off. I don't want to spend too much time on any of these because we have an hour left and we still have quite a bit on the table here to do. Planetar don't have a lot of special abilities, right? They're pretty much just, they have a sword that does a boatload of radiant damage.
Yeah. Angelic weapons, divine awareness. They know if it hears a lie. Innate spell casting. They've got a spell save of DC 20 for a bunch of spells, which we are going to immediately get rid of because spells on monsters suck. Advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects, and healing touch.
Yeah,
and that's it.
So you shoot the Ceramorphosis laser at one of those bad guys, and I think the main awful thing you get is it can heal, it can fly, and there is some mix of divinity and psychometry here, right? Those two things clash, and we end up with the result of that combination. I kind of like the idea that we end up with, this is going to sound so gross, but I think it is the correct move, like a biblically accurate angel, but made of meat. Like a really, like a biological, biblically accurate
Isaac sort of creature. Yeah.
And if I can pivot, I don't know if we would say this for the fusion or whatnot. I think its sword isn't doing radiant, it's doing necro damage.
It could be that. It could be psychic. It could be necrotic. I could see either way.
I think the fun thing is for it to still be doing radiant damage.
Radiant.
Yeah. Okay.
I think
until the fusion, and then it changes with the fusion. Yeah.
All right. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Radiant damage. I think that's kind of fun. So I like this, though. You enter the room and you see this thing with like a long beard of tentacles down the front of its face and like a like that trill going down the top of its head like a spine. And it has a massive greatsword in one hand. And both of the hands are just a mass of tentacles that is able to like grip the hilt of the sword with unnatural strength. And even the sword is like warped and bent a little bit, as if in space it has changed, because the sword is part of the Planetar, right? It is part of its divine essence. When a Planetar vanishes, its sword vanishes with it, and so the sword is as changed. In 4th edition and a few other editions, and I think now as well, because of the Shattered Obelisk, there were Mind Flayers that had like psychic daggers made of like crystal. So maybe this sword is now this giant lance of crystal that it uses as a weapon.
It's a meat sword.
It's just a big hot dog. I've pulled up the Baelor as well, and it also has a shockingly limited number of abilities.
Yeah, let me see. Flaming sword, lightning whip, and then I think it can breathe something?
It's a flaming whip instead of a lightning whip. It's got a fire aura.
Damn.
So anything within an area gets hurt. And death throws. It explodes when it dies. And then it's got some resistances. It's got teleport, which is the most interesting ability.
Yeah, because Baelor are like hunters. I think they track things down.
Yeah.
To some extent. All right, interesting. So we kind of just have two bruiser heavy hitters. So this is clearly the room before the boss room, right? These
Yeah,
two guys are here to whittle down HP and burn a couple of spell slots. I think that's great. I believe our music track has come to a conclusion.
of course.
I guess sound off if
Oh,
you.
come on.
This is actually a real thing. We now occasionally get enough people responding. Is the music doing anything for you? Can you hear
You like
it?
the music?
Chime in. Genuinely, I have to. It has to blast my head off for me to for it to register. So, sound off in the comments. Weird thing to say. So, okay. So whereas the angel is still doing radiant damage, and it has the fun of being able to be this sort of transformed divine creature that can maybe even still heal. I love the idea that it can't do healing hands anymore, but it, like, you see divine light forcing the wounds closed, right? It can heal itself.
I was
What?
seeing sort of for the mental abilities, the psychic abilities, it being a sort of psionic drain. So instead of that radiant light healing it, it vampirically pulls life force from the people around it.
Yeah.
So that way there's some
Cool.
damage on the party as well.
So, and then the Baylor has this, like, heat aura, and that's honestly, we said that kind of flippantly. That is what kills players, right? Is if you stay close to it, you stay in danger. What is that on this ceramorphosized Baylor? What happens when that thing is flooded with psychic energy? Does the flame come to life? Does the flame get replaced with, like, is there this haze, like heat rising off the pavement that is like, like coming off of it?
I think like a living immortal flame is cool that it can control. It moves the aura around a little bit.
That's pretty cool. My thought was to disorient, essentially. If you enter the space, or whenever you're in this space, if you end your turn, make a roll, or you use your reaction to attack the closest thing to you. Roll a whatever percentile die. It's your ally or it's the enemy.
Oh, interesting. So we sort of do a little bit of a fire starter, kind of a carry shtick. You get too
Yeah.
close to this thing and you start to feel this crushing psychic energy on you. Eventually, you end up attacking anything nearby. But if you get too close, eventually, like I said, you start to be firepowers in the, like, Jean Grey Phoenix way, where it's just kinetic energy that can only result in fire.
I think we can use both. When the Baylor is not intertwined with the Planetar, I think it's got that immortal flame control. Once they are put together, there's that radiating psychic force that will cause disorientation.
Okay, cool. I actually don't have much left to write here.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Right? The Planetar can heal itself. The Baylor is, like, conjuring flame and is able to sustain that. That fire has will. It can, like, lance out and pull people into it, so, making them deal with more psionic damage. And once they fuse, that radiant ability to heal people mixes with that psychic ability to, like, control, and disorientation is the result. This, like, powerful psychic static.
Boom.
All right.
And when they both get below 30% HP, or one of them gets below 10%, they'll merge. Something like that.
I think it could be interesting. It wouldn't change the end effect, but depending on who's lower, the other one consumes the other.
Yeah. It's tempting to make up 2 stat blocks for the primary being. We could see about that in publication, because that's Ethan's job.
Some real Ornstein.
And I don't want to just make him do it.
Some real Ornstein and Smog bullshit going on in the corner over here. All right.
I love that. I think it's a super cool fight.
So let's step out of hard encounters and land in normal encounter town.
I have an idea for
While a few of our players are still alive.
Yeah. What do you think of, like, a field of... I say a field, but, like, a gathering of grandfather oaks. Like, they're trying to do different biomass sort of stuff.
Like a Gulthias tree?
Almost.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
Gulthias
no-
tree with a series of blights. That's the closest D&D thing we've got.
Or I
you have
guess we
something
could go
else in
whole
mind?
cloth. What it sounds a lot like is in the Divinity games, Divinity 2 and Divinity Original Sin. Sorry, Divinity and Divinity 2 Original Sin. There are elves prey to these great trees that have like their memories collected in them in a sort of Avatar-esque, Awe has heard you, Jake, kind of vibe. So we could go something like that. I'm trying to think of a good equivalent, right? Because the problem is a treant is just a really low swinger. Like that's something that is relatively petite. Compare that with something a little bit more meaty, right? That's leading us to a Gulthias tree, which is like CR7, I think? CR7, CR8?
We do
so
have
still-
Grandfather Oaks at CR9.
Is that a character? Is that Grandfather Oak? Is that a guy?
It might be.
Because I've never heard of that. I was just trying to find it.
Might just be a guy.
Grandfather Oak magically animates one or two trees. Yeah, that's just a
Yeah, it's a
dude.
guy. My bad.
They captured Grandfather Oak! No!
Who was the guy in our one shot a million years ago? Do you remember him? The old treant that was like. We used to run these, so for those of you who don't know, scheduling conflicts has evolved somewhat, but it used to be one shots where we pretended to be at the end of a campaign. And so we would just do the end of a campaign.
Yeah.
Which was really fun. And for one of them, you guys were trying to kill a Medusa. And on the
yeah.
beach, you ran into this evil tree. And I just, like you knew who it was, I was like, you recognize him. It's Withershins, the treant of the Northern Dales. And you guys were like, no!
How dare you do this?
Take
I
him,
remember
not
that.
take
That was
me, not him.
One of my favorite scheduling conflicts of all time. Go ahead and check that out if you can find it.
I love a random, just pretending to be at the end of a campaign is the best. James Hurst has called out the worst option, and one that I am into, a Hydra.
A Hydra's always
This is
cool.
where we get false hydras.
It would be a Hydra blended with a damn it. There's a name for when an illithid tadpole never gets to bed itself in a brain, and it gets loose, and it continues to grow as it eats, and eventually it turns into a giant purple worm-esque horrible monster that can burrow through the ground and consume large swaths of areas, which is why even illithid will kill tadpoles that are sort of loose. It is too much of a threat. I think they're called, it's N something.
Neothalids.
Neothalids.
Neothalids. Yeah.
So sort of a cross between a Hydra and a Neothalid. I love the concept. My only issue is that it is the great pitfall. It is one monster. And one
That'll be
monster at
pretty
level
sad.
17 is an ill-fated monster. We sort of need to patch up a little bit. So I will say, we're swirling around something, right? We like this natural idea. The Hydra is natural. The tree is natural. We like the idea that it has tried to twist something like that. Let's call it like an archfey, maybe? So it can be a treant that is exceptionally powerful.
Yeah.
And we can kind of explain that away in saying that this is not a treant. This is a fey, an archfey, a living
spirit,
tree.
yeah.
This is something a little bit more to that. And I think that it is a living tree. It is an archfey and a hydra. I think that it is a pet kind of situation, which I'm very into, right? So we have this.
And then you can populate essentially with psychic blights. And that way it's not just one thing. There can be a group of, or two things. There can be a group of these things fighting as well.
Now, something we can do, and I wrote it down in the notes here, and I am a supporter of this when most people are not, because I think it is fun. I've written blights. Punch up the stat block or 30 of them.
Yeah.
I think, especially if you're playing in Theater of the Mind, it is fun to say you open up into the next room and are faced with strange trees of twisting bark and flesh with capillaries for leaves growing out of the floor. It is a disgusting and rotten smelling sight. As you make your way through, eventually one of the trees begins to uproot and untwist a neck that you did not know was there. It is the form of the Archfey. As you discover that you are absolutely surrounded by blights, almost all of them will miss, but 5% of them are going to roll nat 20s. Or it is a blight that is like fused, a blend of a blight mixed with various other creatures that is sort of sprinting unnaturally quickly with big bone spurs and blades in its hands and all kinds of good stuff. The Hydra, like I said, sort of has that tadpole look. It is something that grows very quickly, that can let out some of that psychic awfulness, and maybe has a version of brain extraction, right? Something that can kill a character really quick if they aren't careful. And then this fey tree creature sounds to me like a real summoner, right? Summoner slash like terrain edit. Charm.
Yeah.
All that definitely fits.
What are we doing? All right, we are running a little low, a little crispy on time here. Let's get one more encounter in the books, and then we'll be pretty much good to roll here, right? That'll put us at, maybe one more. 1, 2, 3. That'll be our 4th encounter, and then everything else can be sort of traps, puzzles, trying to get a door open, interesting sort of folding mechanisms like that. So what's one more encounter that we really want the party to lock into? So another piece of advice, right? Because this is an advice show. When I design a dungeon, I design the rooms that need to be gone through. There are rooms that you need to pass through to get where you are going. Sometimes it's only one room. Sometimes it is a few. And then I begin to consider other paths, clever ways to avoid those fights. But I tend to find that some GMs will miss the forest for the trees a little bit, so it is important to keep that view wide. These are the fights that we think a party is almost certainly going to do. And then eventually we can start to consider ourselves with like, well, what if the party is a rogue and they decide to be very clever and make their way through a vent or like make their way through the walls, and we can start to address those things kind of on the side. But let's save that, because not every party is going to do that. So what is one more encounter? This is the exterior encounter, so it should probably be the easiest, right? This is not the heavy hitters we've encountered so far. It might even be a failed experiment, something that is sent outside to die fighting. Do we have any visual there? Michael, what's up? You had your hand up.
Yeah, what do you think about, like, this is more making lore piece of it, but it's trying to make a true forms of, like, giants. Like it takes a stone giant and it's merging it with almost like a stone elemental into some abomination where it is a true stone giant.
The giant of stone, the giant of fire, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, we can even, and the good news about those is they are not SRD, but it is something you could run in your encounter in a game. What you have just spoken of is a Bigby and the Giants. What's that book called? It's not Bigby and the Giants.
Bigby and the Giants, my favorite band.
Bigby. I was about to say Bigby and the Giants is the name of my D&D themed.
Bigby presents band. Glory of the Giants.
Yeah, Bigby presents Glory of the Giants, and then if there we mosey on down to our bestiary. Let's take a peek.
I'm gonna get my other pitch out while you check that.
Yeah,
my other pitch, I do like less, but I do want to say it anyways. It's a failed Kraken experiment that rides around nearby this actual ship and runs interference, basically. It has nowhere else to go, so it stays alongside the Nautiloid and attacks the people that get close to the ship. It falls prey to the one monster issue, but it's got like 500 HP, so it's pretty sturdy, even being one monster.
As long as you give it legendary actions, a lot of that'll kind of take care of itself.
Which I think it does have.
For the record, there is the Etten Ceramorph, which is sort of in that wheelhouse, but not quite the same. Here we go. Here's what I'm thinking of. So the elemental evil giants are about the closest you get. So these are giants that align themselves with the temples of elemental evil. And so the stone giant version is a cairn, right? That is like a ghostly stone giant that has been taken over or died in a specific group of circumstances. And then there is one that is a little bit more sort of stone oriented. Let me see if I can't find that kicking around somewhere. Spencer, what were you about to talk about?
The Kraken does have legendary actions, and it is CR 22 or something like that. CR 23. So it's an option. I do like Michael's. I think that we could totally make that too, where it's the giant of stone, giant of fire, giant of air thing. And it would just be like 4 enemies that are uniquely statted out to have their own abilities that would work well together, sort of sympathetically.
We have another one.
We
have the
which ones.
Absolutely brutally tough CR21 Runic Colossus.
Ew.
For if you want them really dead.
So I think that if we were going to do it, the ones that make the most sense would be stone, storm, frost, and fire.
So all of them? Except for Hill and Ettins?
Then there's Hill and Cloud and Trolls and whatnot, and all the specialty ones. And it would be those 4 that have been psychically bonded in some way through the Ceramorphosis. And they have additional abilities. They've been meshed together with those elemental beings. So they are made sort of more out of the elements that they're akin to.
Yeah, so in the lower range, we have the CR9 Stone Giant of Elemental Evil. We have the Stone Giant Demonic Force, the Stalker of Baphomet, which is sitting pretty at CR12. If I keep going down, we have the Stone Giant Rock Speaker, which is CR16. And if you really want to kill the party, I can scroll down to some Storm Giants, right? I mean, that's where it gets really gnarly.
And what's nice for the viewers is checking the books. Most of the time you do find stuff like that where it's like pretty close to the idea you have and you just reflavor it a bit. For us, for publishing, we're not going to reference Big B's because it's unrunnable, but for you as a DM, super easy.
And I have to give a quick shout. Let me get this so that it can be easily turned around. This is just from Big B's. I just have to the troll amalgam, because trolls can regenerate, you can end up with one of these.
Just kill it.
No.
Just kill it.
Just kill it.
Fire.
Put it down. The troll's
Which is
like,
true.
hey man,
You do
can
kill
I
with fire.
clock out? What do you think?
That's enough.
Don't let him play. I can't stress enough how important it is
Don't
that
let
you
him
not
play.
let him play.
Make him work.
Make him work. Put him in the mines.
I'm sorry. Young Solar Dragon? That sounds awesome.
It's crazy. Young actually isn't as bad. But all right, so we've got the idea for that. Now we'd have to come up with social encounters, traps, and puzzles.
Yeah, so we already have a social encounter ingrained, right? We like the idea of running into one of these experiments that has been living in the walls. Just an absolutely insane gnome. It might be a known Ceramorph, or just a gnome that's like, hi, I haven't seen a normal man here in it. Wait. Yeah, fine. Like, just really...
Wait, follow me.
He tries to jump into the wall.
Wait, turn, stop, sit! And then you both sit as an eyeball. You're like, woo!
And
that
what's
was
nice about
close.
that is if we do make it like sort of island-sized, the gnome as that first social encounter is helpful because he guides the party saying, don't go that way, follow me here. And then you have to design out as much of the dungeon.
You will have to prove to him that you are not Ceramorphed.
Prove it.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty good. And I think as far as traps
When you see
go,
a tadpole.
I think somebody in chat nailed it earlier. I think James hit us with some of the rooms are alive. Some of the rooms just don't want you to be there. What this would most be like is haunts, which is kind of a Pathfinder thing, but there's some examples of them in D&D, which is like... So it is some terrible effect that goes off in the room, and you need to find the source of the haunt to deactivate it so that it will stop going on. I'm trying to think of a really good example. In Book 2 of Legacy of the Ancients, which is this really popular first edition Pathfinder adventure, in Book 2 you went to this giant haunted mansion, and one of the rooms was a giant ballroom, and one of your characters, if they failed, would begin to dance with somebody invisible, and they would start to like choke them and peel their skin off, and you would just be watching this person dance, and you wouldn't be able to stop them until you found the source of the haunt to deactivate. That also features, by the way, an infamous party killer, which is one of the haunts makes a player attempt to jump out of a window.
Nice.
Down onto a like rocky cliff face. And so it's a series of saves. The first save will, if you fail, you hit the roof and then continue to run. And if you fail again, you fall and can very possibly die as you take, just a boatload of bludgeoning damage as you fall down a cliff face.
I think one of the rooms that you go into, and you don't realize until you're all fully in it, is an extra mouth. And you have to try and get out before you were chomped into pieces and swallowed.
Get chopped on. Yeah.
Yeah, I love a skill challenge. I'm always gaming for a skill challenge, right? We just watched, those of you who tuned in to the Song of the Reliquary, our actual play, watched a 2-hour skill challenge the week before last, where we dealt with the dragon in the form of a series of increasingly dexterous skill challenges that went remarkably well. Sometimes that happens, which is the fun of them, right? Sometimes the players just kill it. And it doesn't even seem like it was that dangerous. And only as the GM are you like, yeah, not that bad. Like you're like staring off in the middle distance.
One bad roll, you're all dead.
No, for sure.
So trap 1 is the room of mouths. You get bit on, chomped on, you have to get out of there before you get eaten. And then a series of haunts, which would be related to the creature that was tested on. Which is great because that leads into the encounters that we've already developed. So it would be like, this is the Baelor room. This is the Planetar room. This has this ability that you're going to encounter later on in this fight. So know that these things are going to be happening.
Oh, the thought that it's trying to take like regional effects and weaponize them. And so you find a room with the creatures gone, but the effect is still there. Yeah, that would be good. If we were going to put a dragon in later, if we wanted to put in like an adult or an ancient white dragon later, it'd be really great to have a room that is like all ice. With that like living breath in it, and you're like, what did this? What did it take the powers from to do this? If we'd rolled level 20, we would have had a ceramorphosized solar, which has solars have a bow that automatically kills any creature with under 75 HP or 100 HP. They have a sword that they can just let go of, and it will continue to fight. They have a great sword that will just continue to fight. I think they also know when anybody lies near them. There's only 12. You start to get into some real silly stuff. You start to really get, again, with all the news going around with people talking about like the origins of D&D and AD&D and Greyhawk and stuff. It's always great to hit shit that they came up with in the 70s to kill players. And you're like, this is not well designed. Where it's like, he has a sword that can automatically attack and a bow that kills you if you... And you're like, all right. You're like, all right.
The roof collapses, everybody dies.
Yeah,
I do think...
That's a reminder. If you want to be in line, people say, like, I want the old days of D&D back, then congratulations. In your adventure, you can write, rocks fall, everybody dies.
Everybody dies.
And there you go. If they take a wrong turn, rocks fall, everyone dies.
I do think I would like one more social encounter in here, but I've been sort of in the background racking my brain for how to include a social encounter in this ship underwater full of evil aliens.
I have a pitch.
And I haven't gotten there.
I have a pitch.
Yeah, go ahead.
You meet a scum that wants its master back.
Yeah.
You meet this gross, fleshy mucus man who is like, please, I beg.
That's fun.
Without the master's guidance, I know not what to do. All I do is sit here. And points. And there's just like a little pile of slime. He's like, I just sit here and browse on TikTok. That's all I can do.
And I think the gnome would give you directions, basically, help you get around. And the scum would give you weaknesses. it would tell you, like, these are the things that I know will work. Poison. It's a great way to get that knowledge out to the players that when you get into this last encounter, using poison will work.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, as DM, you can word that and say how it witnessed something, then the master forebode any form of poisons on the ship. And all
Yeah.
Do aboleths do any poison damage? Do they do
don't
some
think so.
toxins?
Let me check.
Does that, it just seems like something that maybe a pseudopod or a tentacle attack would have on the back end. A little
I
bit
didn't
of
think it did.
of toxic poison.
I was also gonna say the scum sounds a lot like kobolds.
They do not have any poison abilities.
That makes things
Enslave,
tougher.
tail attack, mucus cloud, and that's it. Psychic drain.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if the aboleth sees any sort of great changes in 2024.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I think that's basically it. We've got trap rooms, we've got 2 social encounters, we've got 4 full combat encounters. We didn't develop out the giants, but they're basically self-explanatory. We just beef up the giant stat block with elemental abilities, and that's it. So that's cut, copy, paste. We're good.
Yeah, by the way, aboleths have flawless, eternal memories. They pass on their knowledge and experience from generation to generation, and so the injury of being defeated by the gods remains perfectly preserved and fresh in their minds.
Yeah. So I could see that being a pretty sympathetic relationship. You know, they work together. The Mind Flayer wants all the knowledge. This aboleth wants revenge and thinks this might be a way to do it. And they merge on purpose. And that's why it's able to get this huge being under thrall.
Oh, I see. So it still has some of its id. It has a little bit of identity left, which is why this scum would help you. And so you do have this weird moment where you're like, am I going to do what the scum... Like, am I going to keep this aboleth alive? This, like, dangerous thing that wants to enslave people and make them scum? Make them servants? If you've never run an aboleth, by the way, if you've never had a cult... If you've never done a little Shadow over Innsmouth dungeons for your player, where there's a cult worshipping an aboleth, you gotta do it. Lock in, get that in there somewhere. You deserve it. Yeah, I love it. People are like, we should do like a false Hydra arc, and I'm like, there's like 9 monsters that do that.
There's a better thing
just
to
relax.
do. Yeah.
I was just thinking about something. Slight tangent, but with old school rules and how stuff just kills you.
Yeah.
If I remember right, Icewind Dale has one of those.
Yeah, in Icewind Dale, there's a pit into the Underdark where it just says if somebody falls down that, they die. Because apparently the Wizards of the Coast forgot about Featherfall. We had an adventure. We just finished a, like, what, 1.5, 2-year Icewind Dale campaign.
2 year, yeah.
And, I'm sorry, I have a hair in my mouth.
That's rough.
Good.
It's really annoying.
We finished a 2-year-long Icewind Dale campaign where we did encounter that, and I did jump into the big hole.
Yeah, I did a
I
perfectly
jumped in
natural.
after him.
I did a perfectly natural GM thing. You've got there were kobolds in the mine, and there was this big rift that goes down into hell, and so they had kidnapped a bunch of miners, and they were holding one of them over the hole and said, "Surrender and drop your weapons." And you didn't, and they went, "Okay," and they pushed the guy into the hole, and you guys went, "We'll probably not die," and dived after him to cast Featherfall and do all kinds of magical nonsense.
D&D 5e doesn't have a thing that just says rocks fall, you die. This'll be fine. Oh, we die? Word.
And so instead, I had to describe them landing into in a giant lake underground, and then I had to go hang up the call and go, "What the fuck is underground?" which was
next?
Which is really. That's why I recommend maybe not running pre-written adventures, because they're going to end up jumping into a hole into the Underdark anyways. Why bother? Why not just write the whole thing?
You were there for 4 months.
They were underground for weeks. It was really funny. They were underground so long that one of the characters that didn't jump had enough time to learn a feat. They had multiple work weeks to, like, mill away at learning a feat during that time. Too good. Okay, so the party, having discovered horrible abominations across the surface of the world, seramorphosized creatures that should never have been interacted with, finally tracks it down to this mysterious figure, a grand and terrible elder brain calling itself the Grand Designer, an apocryphal title that lays claim to something that is not this being's to claim. You finally track it down to discover a space whale has been turned into a grotesque living ship. Upon arrival and breaching your way into this island-sized creature, you run into a gnomish figure who is trying to liberate his brethren. There are seramorphosized gnomes. You try to explain to him that they can't be saved, and he does not believe you or isn't willing to believe you. You continue, having learned what he has to show you. Delving deeper, you run into the first few experiments. You deal with these horrible creatures. You deal with this giant that has been turned into a servant of this being. Once it is slain and you continue, you run into this bizarre forest that is inside the ship. A full realized forest that is being polluted and grown by a tainted fae. You bring that thing to heal, maybe dealing with a couple of traps that are like haunts on the way, before eventually you meet a scum. This scum seeking to find some way to free its master, who it believes has been sort of mind-controlled by this great illithid power. A little bit of negotiation, maybe a little quest to help it out as it continues. You discover that the elder brain has so transformed itself physically that it is no longer immune to things like poison. It can now be biologically hurt in ways that it couldn't have. You approach its inner sanctum and deal with one of its great inventions, a being of the hells and a being of the heavens, both turned into seramorphosized guardians who then fuse into one terrible creature. Truly, this thing seems to have an eye for the artistic, right? There's a sense of artistic conceptualization from this creature that likes these parallels. Delving deeper, you eventually run into this final encounter, the Grand Designer and this aboleth, working in unison with a number of other servants, transformed creatures of various types, maybe a young blue dragon or two. A truly brutal final fight that the party sort of limps their way out of and are left with a terrible choice. Do you heed the word of the desperate scum in the other room? It will never be the same again. That scum cannot be saved. Do you free the aboleth? Is it an innocent? In this, aboleths are dangerous. Is a dangerous creature that has been trapped still like something you should kill? A little moral quandary just for fun. And at some point during that process, I think probably after the stone giant gets destroyed, some kind of signal goes off and the ship takes off. And so these last few fights are Predator style in space, and you need to find your way back. You need to try and find your way back to the Primaterial plane, or kick up the drums, boys. We're doing Spelljammer. Leaving the world behind to head off to parts unknown. And with that, we have completed a sort of a dungeon for very high-level play, piecing together a couple of encounters based in other stat blocks that you just need to add a couple of HP to, add a little bit of AC, give it some psychic abilities, give everybody a bonus action, and this will be a tough band of fights, especially if your party isn't like sort of super tactically minded. It won't be too hard to kind of get the edge on them in a couple of these situations. With that, it's 9:14. Let's do a bit and then sign off. We have time for a bit for the first time in forever. For those of you who do not know, we run a series of bits on this show. Spencer really sort of manages these for the most part. Options include pop culture character creator, where we take a pop culture figure and try to make them in D&D, and they said, you say, I say, where we basically do what we just did, but micro. Somebody picks a monster, somebody else picks an environment, and it is the third poor sucker's job to try to turn that into an adventure hook. What bit do we think we want to do?
We've done a bunch of pop culture character creator. It's time for they say, you say, I say.
Okay. Everybody go
Get
ahead.
your D20s out.
Yep.
Well, boys, I got good news for you.
I got a 7.
Got 10.
2. Oh, there we go. Wow, what a treat.
Let's see how it goes. So this game, because I rolled low, basically means that I am going to be on the short end of the stick, creating the adventure around the place and the monster that Ethan and Michael select. Part of the game is they can't share with each other what they've selected, so there's no like necessary build-in. You know, like it can't be a dragon's lair and a red dragon. It's meant to be sort of disparate, so that way when I build it, it's harder and funnier for you. And I'm buying time right now by talking to give everybody else time to discover their location and place.
Ethan, do you want place or monster?
Monster.
Monster. All right, I'm place then.
Nice. Typically, that's how it goes. The easiest option is location. So the person who rolls highest typically picks location. And then monster's the next more difficult option. Because you have to roll through the SRD or the monster manual, etc. Unless you've just got one on top of mind. So whoever rolls highest normally gets location. That's at least my pick. Because I don't have every monster in mind at all times.
Weak.
So, how's everybody looking? You think you got your stuff?
Yeah, I've got one, and I'm just looking to see if there's anything else really good while you vamp.
Nice. Speaking of vamp, I think that we should do a vampire one shot at some point here. This is off stream, we played Strahd Must Die Tonight. Did we kill Strahd tonight? No. So Strahd Must Die another night. But if you're looking for a fun one shot that's super well made, definitely check out Strahd Must Die Tonight. It's a fun way to do Curse of Strahd if you don't want to just straight up play Curse of Strahd.
Including one of my favorite, an interaction that has become a meme in my house that I cannot escape from. This is not a joke. It has been repeated 6 million times. I will just hear from around the corner, Do you have a way to contact Strahd? No. No.
I cut his head off.
Yeah, that has been a running meme. Okay, I will give you your monster. Michael, do you have your location?
I do.
All right.
Brain in a jar.
Brain in a jar.
Brain in a jar.
All right.
Cool. The location is a prison made by your local pantheon.
So a god prison.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a god prison with a brain in a jar. Brain in a jar has psychic abilities. It can detect sentience, innate spellcasting, charm person, compulsion, hold monster, detect thoughts, mage hand, zone of truth.
And I think relevant to it being in a god prison, comically low CR. A CR 3 is the lowly brain in a jar.
Yeah. CR 3 700 XP. I'm checking all the abilities to see.
Rare maneuver.
All right. It doesn't require air, food, drink, or sleep.
Why would
the brain in a jar? The brain in a jar is not a prisoner of this pantheon's jail.
Okay.
It is instead a tag-along. It is something that was picked up along the way. Nobody noticed it. The CR3 being passed under the detection of these gods, because of course it did. It is a brain in a jar. But this brain in a jar has had a long time to sit and think and plan and detect and charm and wheedle its way through these cells in this place, expanding ever further and ever further. And at this point, it still isn't detectable by this pantheon. It's still only a CR3, but it has gained reputation and power by manipulating the beings inside the cell. It's talking to them. It's helping them plan. Wherein before they wouldn't be able to discuss plans with each other for escape, this brain in a jar is emitting this psychic energy and allowing them to communicate in a way that they never could have before. A jailbreak has been planned, and it is in the process of being executed. Your party has been pulled in as one of the primary stopgaps for this prison break. You have to save the guards. You have to try to alert the Pantheon as to what's going on, and you need to keep these things in their cells for as long as possible until that happens. And that's the adventure.
I love this Moriarty brain in a jar. I love this. It is I, the Napoleon of crime. It's a brain in a jar.
Straight up, not the villain. Like, he's the villain at the end, but he's not the thing you have to fight. You break the jar and you're good. It's done.
I will not be so easily defeated. I love this guy. He's so funny. You have this like high level devil with a jar with a brain in it, like, no, just sprinting through the halls. No one knows the whole plan but him. Just, it'd be very fun. It's a normal thing for the DM to do the players, if the DM feels like being a jerk, to tell the players to, like, puppy guard a low CR guy, to give the DM a CR3 brain that all of these impossibly deadly creatures are like, we literally have to keep the brain alive. Just a lich floating down the hallway holding a brain in a jar. Like, I will protect you to the last.
Power word kill!
Yeah.
God,
I
it's
want to
so
play in this
funny.
adventure tomorrow. All right.
We'll draft that up next time.
Here at Foolhardy Press, you can catch 3 streams that all start at 7:30 or later if we have technical issues. If we cancel a stream, one of 2 things will happen. So if you don't turn into one of our 7:30 p.m. streams because it's been canceled, it will either be because there is a post on our YouTube saying we're so sorry we had to cancel, or you will be tuning into Scheduling Conflicts, the only show that runs only when other shows get canceled. That is the show that I run. On Sundays at 7:30 p.m. you can catch Game Masters, Masters of Games, where we either play games we have mastered or try to master games we haven't mastered yet. We're playing Baldur's Gate 3 now, which is kind of fun because that's the only one to sort of transition over. It began as a game that we had mastered and has now turned into, how do you get into Shah's temple? A sort of bumbling around trying to figure out what to do next. Soon we'll be trying some other games. We have a lot of fun on there. Come hang out. That's a very casual stream. On Mondays at 7:30, you can catch The Party Makes Things Worse. That is our actual play stream. Spencer recently ran a game in the Monster of the Week system called The Prince of Charming. 9-episode run, really fun. We're currently in the process of running the Song of the Reliquary. We think now probably longer running, not too long though, 15 to 20 episodes. We're only 2 episodes in. You've missed a little action-packed adventure. You would be 3 episodes behind, but someone hit a telephone pole. And so you were blessed.
We'll say none of us hit a telephone pole.
Yeah,
that's very
a
true.
stranger.
And so you did not miss an episode there. So on Mondays, go ahead and check that out and watch our older ones as well. Catch up. On Tuesdays, of course, you can catch DM Writer's Room, where we demystify the DMing process by coming up with adventures, plot hooks, and monster modifications live. Sometimes we end up taking on something like a level 17 adventure, and we have to be a little bit more vague because we kind of have to move through generation. But usually we stick to the lower levels where most people play, and we can get fairly detailed, occasionally running off into other systems, coming up with systems. We did that once just recently. We have a lot of fun doing that as well. Outside of our streams, you can check out Foolhardy Press on YouTube and TikTok, where Spencer makes all kinds of great stuff that you can watch, all kinds of funny memes and whatnot. Catch the TikTok while you can, kids. We have you a month and a half left to enjoy that app, so I guess watch those while you can. Check out the YouTube over the TikTok if you don't mind. And then finally, check us out on DriveThruRPG. Our first adventure, a fun little starter level 1 adventure called Lich's Dollhouse, is up there with a bunch of low CR monster stat blocks that you can use that are all themed around the party being Honey, I Shrunk the Kids into a dollhouse with a Lich's phylactery inside. Really fun, very silly thing we came up with live that turned into a real product. We're working on turning some of our other ideas into full-size products, and yeah, we'll probably see some of that in the near future.
There's also a copy of The Last Thanksgiving on our TikTok that you can find right now. It's like the 3rd video on our page. So if you wanted to get your hands on that bad boy, a quick screenshot of it will do the trick.
Yeah, and that'll be up on probably itch.io soon. I don't know if that's the kind of thing you can put up on DriveThruRPG. Maybe it will be on there at some point. That is a game where you play a group of turkeys trying to make sure that this Thanksgiving is the last Thanksgiving. Very fun, very silly game that you play by throwing eggs at each other to do actions. Kind of like a mix between Dread and Honey Heist. We got inspired by a lot of really fun mechanics that we kind of stapled and stitched together into something that I think is pretty fun. We might even manage to get a little bit of a pretest coming up. And to close, I'm going to read James's comment on the voice I did for the Brain in a Jar. The Brain's voice sounds like Columbo, Peter Falk, or the nanny, Fran Drescher, and is, I would like to say it, a combination. Columbo nanny, Peter Drescher, Fran Falk, if you will. Thank you all so much for watching. We really hope to see you next week as we get back into the business. We are going to have a little bit of odd stream friction coming up here in a minute, right? We're going to be traveling a little bit in this next week, so Sunday stream is probably canceled, right? Monday stream is a maybe. We will tell you day of if the Monday stream is going to happen. Tuesday stream almost certainly going to happen. So keep an eye out on that Monday. Just check your YouTube subscription, see if we make a post about whether or not we'll pull it off. I will be on my way back from a very long, 8-hour drive, so it's really up to if I feel like running a game by the time I get home. And I don't know yet. Depends on how many times I get to stop at a Wawa and get something fun, probably how energized I am by the time I get back. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.